So the oppressors think they can use powerful tanks to crush our resistance, trained soldiers, and some dudes on horses. What if we also had tanks and soldiers and horse with clear Genestealer Cult DNA? Oh, the holographic tables truly have turned. This video will explain what the Brood Brothers Auxilia is, how it works, or at least how you can get it to work, and I will give you some army lists to play. One of the tactics that the Genestealer Cult use in the lore is mind control. Pure strain Genestealers can hypnotize enemies into serving the cult, like they have had a divine revelation. If done soon enough in advance, when the cult rises up, the fortress gates open and tanks spill out to join the cult. The fortress raises the flag of the cult, and those hypnotized Brood Brothers join the cultists. If you have seen Code Geass, mind controlling and fighting the enemy with mechs as powerful or better than theirs to undermine, deceive, and defeat a more powerful enemy, that can be your inspiration. In the lore, several different groups are Brood Brothers. The second-born sibling of a hybrid is a Brood Brother. Only the firstborn are mutants. The other children look human, but are part of the brood mind. They are just as much under the sway as any other acolyte. As one such example, the spawn of Cryptus. There was a campaign in 6th edition. It had Battle Sisters and Blood Angels fighting the Third Tyrannic War as part of the Shield of Baal campaign set. The spawn of Cryptus was a pure strain Genestealer born of the wife of the governor, which then manifested into a patriarch. Or since Genestealer Cult were only in the background and of a model range still produced in 6th edition, it was a brood lord for the Tyranids. The governor and his wife then had a second child. When they died, this second child, who is human-looking, became the governor, and so was under the brood mind sway of his older brother, the patriarch, and only by amazing force of will was he ever able to get out of this. If a cult was stopped early enough, and they have to fight, they may have first and second generation acolytes, but no third or fourth generation, so neophyte units would be made up entirely of Brood Brothers. People who have been recently mind controlled by Genestealers are Brood Brothers. They're not hybrids, but they are part of the Genestealer Cult now. And then there's a more vaguer group, which is recently liberated vehicles, planetary defense forces infiltrated by fourth generation hybrids, like the Brood Brothers Kill Team. They have the head crests, so they're hybrids. So if a hybrid officer told their regiment to shoot someplace, and they shot at some place, the people in the regiment, whether under the brood mind, whether hybrids or not, would be considered Brood Brothers. And so also, anyone who joins the rebellion, but has no clue that there is an alien psychic entity running it from the shadows, they would be considered Brood Brothers. Just so you know the lore. Now, the Brood Brothers Auxilia is not related to the Brood Brothers Kill Team that are clearly hybrids that have infiltrated a regiment. Also, those models don't have unit rules in this edition, 10th edition. You can use them as Cadians or as other Imperial Guard units. You could use them as regular neophytes. Using them as Kazakin is my personal favourite choice. So how do the rules let us turn the enemy guns back on them? You will need the Astra Militarum Codex to play this. Damned shame that you have to buy that book. Damned shame, but it's the only way. There are 2 detachment rules. The first part is Brood Brothers. You can include Astra Militarum units in your army even though they do not have the Genestealer Cult factions keyword. The combined points cost of such units you can include in your army is 500 points in Incursion, 1000 points in Strike Force, or 1500 points in Onslaught missions. Though these units are joining your army, they're not changing keywords. You're not swapping the Imperium keyword for Great Devourer, you're not changing Astra Militarum to Genestealer Cult, they remain Astra Militarum and Imperium units. That matters for which stratagems you can use on which units. It also matters for enemy things like Inquisitor Draxus will get +1 to hit against acolytes in this detachment, but not against Brood Brothers units like a Lehman Russ tank. It has the Imperium keyword. The different point sizes means that up to 50% of your army can be Astra Militarum. Technically, in a 1,500 point game, up to 1,000 points of your army could be Astra Militarum. But we know how the rule works. It's 50%. Incursion games are up to 1,000 points, Strike Force games are up to 2,000 points. It's up to you if you want to take it as gospel for the bracket, or what I see as the spirit of the rules. So in a 1,500 point game, Do you want up to 1,000 points Astra Militarum or up to 750 points Astra Militarum? The strict rules are up to 1,000. House rules may be up to 750 points. These Imperial Guard and Astra Militarum units are referred to as Brood Brothers. Now when we're selecting our army for the Brood Brothers detachment, as the rest of this video will be about the rules, some units can't come over. A Genestealer Cult model must be your warlord. Astra Militarum models lose the voice of command, so officers with voice of command don't get to issue orders, the Imperial Guard army rule. So there's no orders, except I will reveal a legitimate way to get orders in this detachment. And you cannot have any of the following keywords. No aircraft, no commissars, no epic heroes, Lord Solar Leontius is not part of the Broodmind, no Militarum Tempestus, no Ogrins, no Rattlings, we have our own mutant types, no Tech Priest Engine Seers, and no Ministorum Priests. Otherwise, anything from the Imperial Guard Codex or Faction Pack is a legitimate choice. If you're playing a Crusade campaign with a Genestealer Cult, you can add Astra Militarum units to your order of battle, but you won't be able to use them in games unless you're playing the Brood Brothers Auxilia. When you're picking a Crusade army, you have to pick one faction keyword, and then this detachment is the workaround for it. So if you are going to include them in your Crusade, you're going to want to be playing this detachment over and over, otherwise they're not going to level up. But because of the way enhancements work in Crusade, you are able to take Astra Militarum enhancements on your Astra Militarum characters, even though they're going to be used with the Genestealer Cult in the Brood Brothers. But there's another video explaining how enhancements work in Crusade because it's very weird. When you're choosing your units, it is the same points cost for the Imperial Guard units, whether they're played in the Imperial Guard army or in our army. If points went down on an Imperial Guard unit due to internal rules changes in the Imperial Guard Codex, we can take advantage of that all the same. I have some recommendations on which units to pick. The best units to pick can operate alone or are cheaper versions of Genestealer Cult units, or they give us something that the Genestealer Cult completely lacks, like a big goodbye forever cannon. One shot, one engine kill. Like the Shadow Sword. Like the video. It has a big cannon with strength 24 and damage 12 to remove big threats, or at the very least knock out a rhino per turn. The Kazakin are a very good choice. They have a range of guns that can cause damage, and they can still receive orders, because they issue themselves an order. Their unit ability is Warrior Elite. Once per battle round at the start of any phase, you can issue one order to this unit, and until the start of your next command phase, it has that order. So in the movement phase, you can have +3 movement from move, move, move. In the combat phase, if you really wanted, you could have fixed bayonets for +1 weapon skill. More likely, you will use take aim for +1 ballistic skill, use that at the start of the shooting phase, or first rank fire, second rank fire. Improve the attack characteristic of rapid fire weapons by 1. So the hotshot lasguns get an extra shot, the plasma gun gets an extra shot. Or you can have take cover. Use that in the enemy turn if it's the first time in this battle round you are issuing an order to the unit. You get to add +1 to your armor save. That works in shooting or combat. 3+ save. You still have this ability to issue orders to the unit from the unit. The detachment rule specifies that they lose the voice of command ability, but this unit doesn't have the voice of command ability. The detachment rule doesn't say you lose all access to orders. And if you think, no, it definitely doesn't work like that, it's meant to take away all the orders for everyone, everywhere, there has been an FAQ to say the Kazakin can still issue an order to themselves in this detachment. The Hellhound is a useful choice because while many units in the Astra Militarum Codex will just support keyword Astra Militarum units, as Genestealer Cult units will only support keyword Genestealer Cult units, the Hellhound has the ability to strip cover from an enemy. That will help the Genestealer Cult units and the Imperial Guard units because you target an enemy unit, and that enemy unit cannot get the benefit of cover. Great. Doesn't matter which kind of unit you fire at them next, they're not going to have cover. And the Hellhound has very good overwatch with its Chem Cannon, damage 2, wounding infantry on a 2+, or Inferno Cannon. And you can add a heavy flamer to the front of the hull. It also has a pretty tough profile at toughness 10 and a 2+ save. You can't usually smash it aside in the way you can with a Goliath truck or a Chimera. The best Lehman Russ tank to have is the Lehman Russ Battle Tank. You get to reroll hit rolls on all of your attacks. It is conditional, but you always get to reroll hit rolls of 1. That applies to ranged attacks and melee attacks. All attacks. And you can fully reroll a hit roll if you are attacking an enemy on an objective marker that you do not control. This doesn't just apply to the big cannon. It is the sponson weapons, it's the hull weapons, it's the hunter-killer missile. They do really good damage, and they're a tank that can operate without officer support. They don't need +1 to hit, because they've got full rerolls to hit. Or we take a different approach. Have a Rogel Dawn which has 1 million guns. A lot of them are sure to hit, even if you're hitting on a 4+. And the Rogel Dawn can fit into a smaller space on the battlefield than a Shadow Sword can. Or an even smaller tank, the mighty Cyclops Demolition Vehicle, which is so small it can fit inside the back of a Chimera. It's a useful little unit to have. Even though it's objective control 0, it's still a unit in your army that can deny deep strike up to 9 inches away. And you can score secondary missions like behind enemy lines, having units in different table quarters, and display of might, or deny the enemy display of might, as you are a unit in no man's land. It can't perform actions, but having it in strategic reserve, then having it arrive when you get one of these 3 missions, is a very cheap way to score victory points. And you can blow up the enemy in a way that is very thematic to the Genestealer Cult. I've seen people before and still, they want to put 1 or 2 Benefactus in a truck and fire 2 to 4 las cannon equivalents from that truck. That's very expensive. If you'd like some actual las cannons, in a vehicle or not, have scouting Catachan heavy weapon teams. They're not hazardous. It's 3 las cannons. It's cheaper. You get to reroll hit rolls and wound rolls of 1 against monsters and vehicles. Because they can scout, they can take objectives in the first turn. Weapon teams are small and cheap units that can provide the second detachment rule, integrated tactics, which I will explain after I've covered some more good units to pick. Scout Sentinels. They have a gun that can support the Genestealer Cult side with integrated tactics, while their ability, Daring Recon, you just have to point at an enemy unit and all the Astra Militarum units in your army can reroll hit rolls of 1 against them. 1 visible unit within 18 inches. There you go. It's another scouting unit. It could start right next to an objective if you needed it to. You could put the heavy weapon teams or 10 Catachans in a Chimera or a Taurox. The Taurox is 10 points cheaper, the Chimera has a better profile and better guns, but we can't use the Chimera's unit rule because that's about orders. We can use the Taurox unit rule, which lets it advance and the units inside can still disembark. They're dedicated transports. If all the units that start the game inside can scout, then the dedicated transport can scout. These are more cheap units for integrated tactics. Use Krieg Combat Engineers for the same reason. You've got Scout, it's a cheap unit for the detachment rule, but also you get remote mines that can cause damage to vehicles, and you get grenades for free. You can only use grenades once per turn, whether it's free or not, so it's only this unit or the Reductor Saboteur that can use grenades. If you take large squads of neophytes, like 20 neophytes, you may want 20 Deathcore of Krieg. They have plasma guns and melter guns, those are nice weapons. The unit gets bonuses to hit after they take some casualties. You lose 1 man, you get +1 to hit. You're hitting on 3s. If you're below half strength, and that will happen pretty quickly, you also get +1 to wound. And you can return D3 +1 models to a unit of 20. But that's maybe a bit too much like neophytes, and neophytes are cheaper, and neophytes get more guns. There are 4 special guns for every 10 neophytes, or there are 2 special guns for every 10 Deathcore of Krieg. You can make this Deathcore unit even tougher with the Quartermaster Cadre for a 5+ Feel No Pain, so long as you are a legend who uses legend units. These can be found in the Astra Militarum faction pack. Or you can have a Primera Psyker for a 4+ Invulnerable save. That's better than a Benefactus whose Invulnerable save only affects itself. Yes, the Benefactus is taking a lot of stray shots in this video, but some of those shots are deliberate shots at the Benefactus. Sort out your unit rule. A 4+ Invulnerable save for the model for 1 phase compared to its normal 5+ Invulnerable save is not a good rule. You could use a Basilisk to slow down the enemy and blow up enemies on their home objective. Damage 2, so Space Marine hordes like lots of Khorne Berserkers, they will suffer. But without orders, you hit on a 5+ when firing indirectly, so it's an option. The Earthshaker platform is a better option because it's cheaper. I have a video going through all the Imperial Guard units, including Legends units, and rating the best ones, and explaining how I would use each unit. This is recommended watching, at the very least to find out where the Cyclops demolition vehicle has more use. And affiliates are a cheaper place to buy models compared to Games Workshop, and if that discount is the same for you as you can get in your local store, just know that using these links helps me in the process. This detachment is the only way to have Imperial Guard units in your Genestealer Cult army, annoyingly. In 8th edition, there were units there in the Codex. In 9th edition and the start of 10th edition, in the Index, we could take them as allied units. But Codex Genestealer Cult locks you to this one detachment, where up to half your army can be Imperial Guard. It's a fun playstyle, but unfortunately this is a difficult detachment to play due to its hard to apply detachment rule and weak stratagems. So let's do that detachment rule. The other detachment rule. Integrated tactics. Each time an Astra Militarum unit from your army is selected to shoot, you can select one enemy unit within 18 inches and visible of that unit. If you do, until the end of the phase, models in that Astra Militarum unit can only target that enemy unit, and only if it is an eligible target, so it's in range and visible, and then that enemy unit is caught in overlapping fire. While an enemy unit is caught in overlapping fire, each time a Genestealer Cult model from your army targets that enemy unit with a ranged attack, only ranged attacks, you get +1 to hit. It is an optional thing you can do. I would say it's more something that occasionally happens. You can mostly ignore this detachment rule, don't bother with it, and instead enjoy that first detachment rule I read out. You get big tanks as units in your army. Let's look again at the massive list of limitations in this detachment rule. This only applies to Genestealer Cult shooting. It does nothing to our Astra Militarum shooting. It does nothing for our Genestealer Cult melee attacks, the way that Final Day does with a similar rule. The enemy has to be visible to the Brood Brothers unit, so indirect fire weapons firing indirectly cannot use this rule. You have to be within 18 inches, so no long-range shots across the table are going to cause it. Genestealer Cult units that shoot that same enemy don't need to be within 18 inches, which is good news for the long-range mining lasers and indirect fire Ridge Runner mortars and Reductus bombs. Another limitation, the Brood Brothers unit can only target that enemy. So if you wanted your Lehman Russ battle tank to tag an enemy 14 inches away, the cannon can do it, but the heavy flamers will not be able to shoot anything else. They are out of range, and you have to put all your guns at this one enemy that you want to hit with overlapping fire. You cannot shoot the heavy flamers at other nearby enemy units. Then the Genestealer Cult units from your army that shoot at that enemy unit that are affected by overlapping fire get +1 to hit in that phase. Don't try and get it with the big tanks. But if you have many small units, that can work. Hit it with any Brood Brothers unit. A lone model fires a las pistol. You don't even need to hit, you just need to fire everything at them. And then they're affected by overlapping fire. And then a Ridge Runner fires at that enemy unit, and then hit it with your neophytes. So the Ridge Runner got +1 to hit, and then the neophytes will get +1 to hit, and then an extra point of armor penetration from the Ridge Runner's crossfire rule. You can pair up Imperial Guard units and Genestealer Cult units together and have them support one another. Have Death Riders near Atalan Jackal Bikers, whose mining laser and grenade launcher and small arms can benefit. Or do what I've already said and just ignore this rule. Have your Imperial Guard unit shoot what is best for them to shoot at. If they happen to fire all their guns at an enemy unit, and then you fire some Genestealer Cult models at that same enemy unit, +1 to hit is appreciated. This detachment wants you to focus fire from several units onto one enemy unit to get rid of them through combos. It takes more effort to set up than is usually worth it. And in the final day, having a nearby Tyranid unit to your army is all you need to get +1 to hit. That works in shooting and in melee. Or there's Host of Ascension, where the combos come from stratagems and unit combinations you sorted out in the army construction step. There are more parts to add to the Brood Brothers combo, and that's with enhancements. Martial Espionage. You put it on a Genestealer Cult character, and one Brood Brothers infantry or mounted unit within 9 inches can increase their ranged attack AP by 1. Shame it doesn't work on the big tanks, but it's valuable on a big unit of Death Corps of Krieg firing loads of shots. It's valuable on the already good armor penetration of the Kazakin weapons. As you have to be within 9 inches, and you can't be part of the unit, Genestealer Cult characters cannot join Imperial Guard units, If you use this 25-point enhancement, put it on a lone operative like a Sanctus with a sniper rifle or a Reductus Saboteur. Have them use the ability Imperial Guard unit shoots, and remember that after shooting with that guard unit, the Genestealer Cult character's own shooting will be improved if they attack the same target, as long as all the restrictions of the detachment rule are met. It's an okay enhancement. I think you also need some way to ignore cover for the Imperial Guard unit, like having a Hellhound or Leman Russ Exterminator attack. Hellhound ignores cover for the enemy, Leman Russ Exterminator gives you a further point of armor penetration. Otherwise, the extra point of armor penetration can be eaten up by the benefit of cover, which is really easy to get in 10th edition of 40k. Oh, the videos I have done about it. And that's a lot of commitment. That is a lot of commitment required. One easy way to have it work is to have a character arrive from Deep Strike at the same time and location as Kazakin arriving from Strategic Reserves. Shoot the thing you want to shoot, you get bonus AP. Adaptive Reprisal is an enhancement that works with the playstyle I like. Brood Brothers do the shooting, Genestealer Cult do the fighting. The Genestealer Cult character can make a friendly Genestealer Cult unit within 9 inches heroically intervene for free. Although the targeted Genestealer Cult unit still needs to be within 6 inches of the enemy unit to use heroic intervention. You are within 9 inches of yourself. This is how auras and rangers work. So put it on a locus that fights first, and heroically intervene with acolytes with mining tools and auto pistols, or a unit of metamorphs. It wants to be the locus because you don't get the fight first charge bonus normally when you heroically intervene. The locus always has fight first for their unit, so you can protect the tanks by killing enemies that charge them. The Hero Returned is an enhancement to put on an icon ward, joining 20 neophytes. It improves the leadership and objective control of all the models in the unit by 1. So you now have leadership 5+ on that unit, the best leadership allowed in the game, as the icon ward 6+ leadership goes to 5+, and you have objective control 3 on every neophyte. You can potentially string these across 2 objectives, and there is so much objective control, the enemy cannot take it from you. Usually what ends up happening is they're able to shoot some models off one of the objectives, so then you turtle up on the other objective, but at least that objective is yours for like forever. Firepoint Commander is a 10-point enhancement that lets the unit perform Overwatch on a 5+ instead of hitting on a 6+. You don't get to do Overwatch for free, you still need to spend the command point. It's somewhat useful for a unit of 20 neophytes. It was an enhancement I took when the Primus gave the unit full reroll to hit. It no longer does that. So it's good enough with spare points on a spare character that's with neophytes, but you choose the Hero Returned instead if you haven't already used the Hero Returned. So there's a couple of okay enhancements. Then we get to the stratagems, and I'm going to go from like most usable to least usable. Symbiotic Destruction doesn't seem like it does a lot, but it is the best stratagem in this detachment in my opinion. 1 Astra Militarum unit and 1 Genestealer Cult unit from your army that haven't been selected to shoot yet. Pick an enemy unit that's visible to both of them, and in range of at least 1 weapon from each of the units, and until the end of the phase, models in those units can only make attacks against the enemy unit, but you get to reroll wound rolls of 1 for each unit. You would fire the Astra Militarum unit first, because this can only be used against a visible enemy, and then you'll get the detachment rule as long as you are also within 18 inches. The thing to be wary of is any stratagem that lets the enemy move after getting shot, as they can in the Imperialist Fleet detachment. They can move 6 inches after getting shot by 1 enemy unit. Then your other unit cannot shoot them, and cannot shoot anything else. But I use this on a Shadow Sword, or Rogel Dawn, or other big tank, and any Genestealer Cult unit. Then the Shadow Sword gets to reroll wound rolls of 1. It wounds like everything on a 2. Let's not mess up by rolling 1s to wound. And it sounds extra good once you consider that having this, the reroll wound rolls of 1, was part of the Grizzle Company detachment rule, and that part was considered too strong. I have used this stratagem to some effect, but it can be skipped. And that is what I'm saying about the best stratagem in this detachment. Regimental Reinforcements. In your opponent's shooting phase or the fight phase, just after an Astra Militarum infantry regiment keyword unit from your army, but not artillery and not character, is destroyed, you can use this stratagem on the infantry unit even though they were just destroyed. You roll a d6, on a 3+, you place a cult ambush marker anywhere on the battlefield, more than 9 inches horizontally away from enemy units. Standard cult ambush stuff. and then you add a new unit to the identical unit that was just destroyed in Cult Ambush.
This is the voice of the Mysterons. We know that you can hear us, Earthmen.
All the usual Cult Ambush things apply. This is a new identical unit, not the same unit. It's at starting strength. All of its wounds are back, all of its one-shot weapons are reloaded, and if you were playing Crusade, this is a separate unit to the one you start the game with. So any further XP will not apply to this replacement unit, but there are several restrictions on this stratagem. It's the shooting phase or the fight phase only. So if the enemy was able to kill you in the movement phase or the charge phase with tank shock, you can't use this stratagem. It's infantry and regiment keywords only, so no artillery like the field ordnance battery. You can't use it on sentinels either, because they may be regiment, but they're not infantry, and no character models. The best use is a big unit of 20 Death Corps of Krieg, or 10 Elite Kazakin. And maybe you can get the extra command point from their Vox caster. You can use it on the unit even though they're dead, but you can't if they died while battle shocked. It only works on a 3+, if you roll a 1 or a 2, you spent the command point and gained nothing. And you can only use this stratagem once per battle, regardless of success. Give it a go. We use the current rules for Cult Ambush, so this is a unit that can return by strategic reserves, or there is a Cult Ambush marker that they can use to arrive in the enemy turn, or just arrive by strategic reserves. If you had Deep Strike on this unit, they could Deep Strike. A Dark Network is an unusual stratagem. It can be used by Genestealer Cult units. This is the only stratagem that can be used by Genestealer Cult units alone. All the others in the detachment require at least one Astra Militarum unit to be involved in some way, and it can't be used on vehicles. You use this in the reinforcement step of your opponent's movement phase, just after an enemy unit is set up on the battlefield from reserves. This could be Deep Strike, it could be strategic reserves. One Astra Militarum unit or Genestealer Cult unit from your army, not vehicles or monsters, within 12 inches can make a normal move of up to 6 inches. It's unfortunate that it's keyed to enemies arriving from reserves. It doesn't apply if enemies disembark from a transport. But I see 3 different things you can do with this. You can move away from enemies and get out of range of their guns, or out of line of sight, and so not being able to be shot. Or you get further away so that the enemy cannot charge you. If you are more than 12 inches away, they can't charge you. You are not an eligible charge target. Exceptions exist with like Howling Banshees. Second way to use it is, because this is a normal move, you can embark within a transport. You can embark within a transport after any normal advance or fallback move. This is a normal move. Or way number 3 that you can use it, move closer to the enemy. Get more of your models on an objective. Metamorphs especially will want to move closer to the enemy because if they are then shot, you can surge move into the enemy. Even a D6 random surge move from Metamorphs with Hand Flamers is likely to succeed. The unfortunate thing is, you will almost never get to use this stratagem because not that many enemies will come from reserves and you think, oh, I really need to move 6 inches. If the enemy is straight up fighting you in a fair fight, why are you doing a fair fight? You're Genestealer Cult. But if they're playing fair, with no reserves and sneaky shenanigans and people coming in from behind or above or below, you don't get to use this stratagem. It's not a proactive stratagem. 4th stratagem, In the Shadow of Iron. In any phase, just after an enemy unit has moved within 9 inches of one of your Cult Ambush markers, you can set up a destroyed Cult Ambush marker anywhere on the battlefield, more than 9 inches away from an enemy, and within 6 inches of an Astra Militarum vehicle from your army. Cult Ambush markers are not that important anymore. They were when this codex came out and this stratagem was written for it, because it used to be that if you lost a Cult Ambush marker, you lost a unit that could return. Now they're just waiting in Cult Ambush and can return by strategic reserves. So you would only use this stratagem if you lost a Cult Ambush marker and you were going to return a unit waiting in Cult Ambush right there, right now. How about near a tank and right now? Or near an Icon Ward with their ability, which doesn't cost any command points. As I have Icon Wards in this army, I don't use this stratagem, and I don't think you will either. It's potentially valuable if you wanted to have a unit pop up in front of your tank to stop it from getting charged, only if that would be a long charge, because any Cult Ambush markers within 9 inches of the enemy are going to get removed. But yeah, you can prevent like a 10-inch charge from an enemy unit that was coming. I've never used this stratagem, and I haven't considered using it since Cult Ambush was changed to allow units to arrive from strategic reserves. There are worse stratagems. Suppress and Overwhelm. You pick an Astra Militarum unit that's shot in the shooting phase, and pick an enemy unit hit by one or more of those attacks, and until the end of the turn, that enemy unit cannot fire Overwatch. And each time a Genestealer Cult unit from your army selects that enemy unit as a target of a charge, you can reroll the charge roll. So the Brood Brothers unit has to hit the enemy, but unlike the detachment rule, it doesn't have additional requirements like range or requiring line of sight, so artillery can use this stratagem. Oh good! Okay, so Genestealer Cult units can reroll charge rolls when we charge that enemy unit. But we have command reroll, which allows us to reroll the charge roll, and you only have to spend that command point if you didn't get the number you wanted the first time round. The enemy cannot fire Overwatch, but this is a stratagem you use in the shooting phase. The enemy could have used Overwatch in the movement phase. Ah, awkward. There is potentially value if you are multi-charging that unit. Then multiple Genestealer Cult units get to reroll the charge roll. Again, I don't think you will use this stratagem, because I never have. It's really only something you do if a Genestealer Cult unit was on an objective, chose to remain stationary in the movement phase so an enemy unit couldn't fire Overwatch as a reaction, and there was only one enemy unit around, and you were going to charge that enemy unit, and you were scared of their Overwatch, and you had an Astra Militarum unit that could hit that enemy. Then, when all planets mentioned have aligned, you will use this stratagem, if you have the command points available and don't want to use any other stratagem. Then we get to acceptable losses, and even less useful stratagem. For 2 command points, you pick 1 Astra Militarum unit from your army in the shooting phase, and you pick 1 enemy unit in engagement range of Genestealer Cult units from your army. Until the end of the phase, that 1 unit can make ranged attacks that target the enemy unit, even though you can't normally do that because they're in melee. But if it does, after it has resolved those attacks, you roll a dice for each Genestealer Cult unit that was in combat, and on a 5+, your unit suffers D3+1 mortal wounds. From my reading of this stratagem, if the enemy unit was also in engagement range of one of your Brood Brothers Astra Militarum units, you could still use this stratagem, as long as there is also one of your Genestealer Cult units in engagement range with that same enemy. Alright, yeah, there's a shenanigan workaround. Alternatively, you could fall back with the Genestealer Cult unit and not be worried. Don't spend 2 command points, don't cause mortal wounds to your own unit. The only real use is if the Genestealer Cult unit is on an objective you need, it is in combat and it is surrounded, and it's not battle shocked, so you can control the objective with objective control of that unit, and then I would just fall back and use command reroll on the Desperate Escape test if I needed to on if it was 1 model, like a Ridge Runner, that would be destroyed if the Desperate Escape test was failed. Okay, a different time when you may possibly want to use this is if you shot an enemy unit and they made a surge move into one of your Genestealer Cult units. Then you can still have an Astra Militarum unit shoot that enemy unit. It's unfortunate if they end up surging into one of your Brood Brothers units, because we can only use this if they're in engagement range of a Genestealer Cult unit. What a terrible stratagem, what a terrible 2 command points, what a terrible time to want to play a Hive Cult themed Genestealer Cult. That's the cult that specializes in using Imperial Guard units against themselves. The real stratagems you use in this detachment, the place your command points get spent, are on Tank Shock, are on Rapid Ingress, are on Grenades, are on Command Reroll, and Smokescreen on tanks that can use Smokescreen to get stealth and the benefit of cover. Okay? Okay. There are tactics to using this detachment beyond the army selection. Part of that is still army selection. Then we'll look at army lists. You could go for a very skewed list of all infantry. 60 neophytes. It's not 60 battle sisters, but 60 neophytes, plus as many Cadians, Krieg, and Catachan as you can fit. Hundreds of bodies that enemies cannot get through. The Imperial Guard unit shoot first, the Ridge Runners shoot second, the Neophytes shoot third and get +1 to hit and an extra armor penetration, and ignore cover from a Ridge Runner with Crossfire and a Survey Auger. Your punishment is having to paint and play that many models. bring movement trays, or a big shovel to move that many models around. Or we go for shooting. We pick Genestealer Cult units that are good at shooting. A Ridge Runner with the big mining laser. A Benefactus with its brain laser, a Reductus Saboteur with their bombs. Have them in a Rock Grinder with a big laser. The characters can get out and do actions. Kazakin in a Taurox could keep pace, and the Taurox or Chimera guns can support the Rock Grinder and Ridge Runners and characters to get +1 to hit, so the Benefactus brain is hitting on a 2+. The Ridge Runner and the mining lasers are hitting on a 2+ if you use the Spotter, because the Spotter changes the ballistic skill of the unit to ballistic skill 3+, and then the detachment rule gives you +1 to hit, and so you are hitting on a 2+. Or you can just forget the detachment rule. It's bad and not worth the effort unless it's convenient. Use this detachment to play combat Genestealer Cult units, they go and do the fighty things, and the Imperial Guard units have the big tanks. It's a novelty, it's unexpected. Big guns end lives. The style you want to play is up to you, and after a few games with this detachment, you can figure out the style you like. It can be unit dependent as well. So here's the first army list, 1000 points. It's mechanized and armored. I am within my tank, my transport. I am unbothered by small arms. I am chill. I am vibing within my vehicle. The Warlord is a Reductus Saboteur. They can infiltrate if you find out that the enemy has infiltrators. You might get to infiltrate before them if you can set up a unit first. Alternatively, you start inside the Goliath truck. 10 neophytes also start inside a Goliath truck. You want to have a grenade launcher, a mining laser, a seismic cannon, and a Weber. Normally I pick a flamer, but I'll pick a Weber in case I use the symbiotic destruction stratagem, which lets you reroll wound rolls of 1, and I might roll a 6 on that reroll, which causes a mortal wound. There's another 10 neophytes, same weapons. They start on the home objective, they use a plan generations in the making to make it sticky so it is still ours, and they can move to another objective to keep stickying, or they can stay still on your home objective to block enemy deep strike. It depends on the mission you're playing. If it's linchpin, I would stick around. If it's supply drop and you don't need your home objective for victory points, I would move on. Those are examples. Many other primary missions exist across the White Dwarf missions, the Crusade missions, and the campaign book missions. If you need your home objective, if there is a home objective, keep them there. If you don't need it or there isn't one, move away. So there's a Goliath truck for the Reductus Saboteur, and separately also 10 neophytes. The Reductus Saboteur can join the neophytes, and you can have 2 different units in the transport as long as you have the capacity for the models. Goliath truck is transport capacity 12, we can fit 10 neophytes and 1 Reductus Saboteur. There's a unit of 5 acolytes with hand flamers. They have an icon and 4 hand flamers. Their job is to deep strike and hurt enemy light infantry, the equivalent of 5 acolytes like Chaos Cultists. You start them in deep strike, and they land and score victory points, primary missions and secondary missions. There's a Ridge Runner, they have the big laser, and they have a Spotter. So they could potentially hit on a 2+. The Heavy Stubber could fire at something separate and help a Genestealer Cult unit with crossfire. The Genestealer Cult unit doesn't have to fire all of their weapons at the same enemy that a Brood Brothers unit shot at in order to benefit from +1 to hit from the detachment rule. There's 5 Atlan Jackals. This is a unit that can scout, so they can move forward and hold back enemies so they don't rush your lines right away. They could tangle and fight and defeat infiltrating enemies. 5 Pure Strain Genestealers are also a good idea, but I went with the Bikers because the bikes have range weapons and so can potentially get the detachment rule benefiting their shooting, which will help the grenade launcher and mining laser especially. Then we get to the Allied Brood Brothers part. There is a Lehman Russ battle tank. I have 2 multi-melters, a las cannon, a heavy stubber, and a hunter-killer missile. A Lehman Russ battle tank is really strong at 1000 points. You can bully and upset and blow up enemies that take objectives. Or blow them up generally. On maps where there is one objective in no man's land closer to either side than the center one, the natural expanse as it's called, this is where the Lehman Russ should head towards. That's the objective they're gonna keep shooting at. And if you can get full rerolls to hit because the enemy is on an objective, it's also a great unit for Overwatch. I don't care about the Firepoint Commander enhancement. Even when a Primus gave neophytes full rerolls to hit, before its ability was changed to +1 to hit, this Lehman Russ did better Overwatch than 20 neophytes with full rerolls to hit and hitting on a 5+. Because even hitting on a 6+, with full rerolls to hit and all of the guns that we've got, you do damage. Remember that battle cannon has blast. There's a small unit of 5 Krieg combat engineers. They're a good small unit for conveying the detachment rule. They have scout. We can move closer to objectives first turn or be closer to the enemy if it's advantageous to. The unit has a power weapon, a hand flamer, a flamer, 2 shotguns, and a remote mine. They are mounted in a Taurox, a dedicated transport, and as every model inside can scout, this unit can scout. Then I have Catachan heavy weapons teams with las cannons, 3 las cannons, because I want anti-tank weapons to complement the unit's special rule of rerolling hit rolls and wound rolls of 1 against enemy tanks and monsters. They ride in a Chimera that can also scout, because everyone inside can scout. The Chimera could have 2 heavy bolters if you normally face lots of Space Marines, or 2 heavy flamers if you want another Overwatch threat. The Catachan heavy weapon teams can use the firing deck, although because the weapon team counts as 2 models, including for the purposes of transporting and firing deck, only 1 team can fire from the firing deck, so that would be 1 las cannon and 1 las gun. This weapon team has las guns, whereas the Cadian weapon team has las pistols, which you can't also fire with another kind of big gun. So when you're firing the Catachan version normally, it's 3 las cannons plus 3 las guns. Each model fires all of the weapons they can that are not pistols. While I could have had the heavy weapon teams and the Krieg engineers in the same transport, I want to have more units that are fast and able to do actions and control objectives. I don't want to send a cluster of 3 units all at one enemy target when I might need to split them up. And I have more units that can scout. So there are 4 scouting units in this list. The engineers in the Taurox, the heavy weapon team in the Chimera, the Jackal Bikers, and the Ridge Runner. If it's advantageous, you could start next to or on 3 objectives in the center. That's a strong starting position if you're going first, and you use scout after knowing who goes first. The Leman Russ is scary to point at one side of the board, while the fast units, the Goliath Truck, the Taurox, the Chimera, the Jackal Bikers, the Ridge Runner, they can react and move where needed. And if there is a really tough enemy unit at 1,000 points, the equivalent of a Leman Russ, the Taurox and the engineers could hit it with their free grenade stratagem and then remote mines on 1 turn. The Reductus in the truck could do it on another turn, free grenades and demolition charge. Supported to get the detachment rule if a Brood Brothers unit like the Taurox shoots her target, then she hits on a 2+ with her demolition charge. And also disembarking from the Goliath truck gives her full rerolls to wound if it shoots the same target and hits with at least one of its guns. That's a good Reductus demolition charge. Also, the Goliath truck can use its demolition cache, which hits on a 4+ due to integrated tactics. I have 4 small Brood Brothers units, the heavy weapons, the engineers, the Taurox, and the Chimera, that can be used to give that detachment rule. Those are the units that might give the detachment rule. The Leman Russ doesn't want to bother. The Leman Russ wants to fire its guns at the best things its guns are good for. Fire the heavy stubber at infantry, don't fire the heavy stubber at a tank along with everything else, just to convey +1 to hit on like a squad of neophytes that are then going to shoot that tank. It's probably not worth it. But this army is very good at fighting tough enemies like knights, custodes, and well-armored enemies, like potentially a Catan. And we have enough other weapons and small units that can deal with hordes of enemies. If Dark Eldar throw 1,000,000 witches at you, you have a lot of units that can kill the witches or will die to witches. But the tanks are unlikely to, and they can kill some witches. This is beginning to sound like an Adeptus Sororitas video if we're killing witches. So to kill things, the stratagems you use the most are grenades, and tank shock with the Chimera and Leman Russ for more mortal wounds. You roll a d6 for every point of toughness you have. On a 5+, it's a mortal wound. So from the Chimera, that's averaging 3 mortal wounds. From the Leman Russ, 3 or 4 mortal wounds. And the Jackal Bikers have Demolition Run. You move, you do a Demolition Run, which is like a grenade, but you roll as many dice as you have models in your unit. While we're blowing things up, the 4 small Brood Brothers units and the Goliath truck and the Neophytes can complete actions and hold objectives. I find that cheap tanks are annoying to get rid of in the later game of 1,000 points. So be aggressive with the Leman Russ and the Jackal Bikers to keep the enemy distracted while you score victory points with the rest of your army. If you want to swap out the Taurox or Chimera for another unit in your army list, do it. I offer a suggestion to swap the Taurox for a Scout Sentinel to keep the scouting into good position before turn 1, or have 5 Pure Strain Genestealers to block those enemy infiltrators. But I like having the metal boxes that the enemy struggles to get through in the first turn and the last couple of turns. And the 6 resurgence points we get at this size of game can be spent on either 2 lots of 10 neophytes, maybe not the best idea, but you might need more infantry, or you use it on the bikes that are probably going to die first, and the acolytes, and then another one of those 2 units again. Alright, let's crank this up to 2,000 points. We need more troops, we need bigger tanks. And this is an easily modifiable army list, as I'm going to show you. But it has a Reductor Saboteur, 10 Metamorphs, a Goliath Truck, a Locust with Adaptive Reprisal, 10 Acolytes with Auto Pistols, an Icon Ward with the Hero Returned, 20 Neophytes, 2 separate units of Achilles Ridge Runners, 1 Achilles Ridge Runner and another, 1 Achilles Ridge Runner, 5 Acolytes with Hand Flamers, 5 Acolytes with Hand Flamers, 5 Pure Strain Genestealers, 5 Atalan Jackals, and then in our Brood Brothers contingent, a Shadow Sword, 20 Death Core of Krieg, a Primaris Psyker, a Scout Sentinel, 10 Kazakin, and a Cyclops Demolition Vehicle. That comes to 1,990 points, 1,185 points for the Genestealer Cult, 805 points for the Imperial Guard. The Reductor Saboteur infiltrates. It doesn't have to be that far up. Enemies moving close will have to stay outside of 9 inches, or face her planted explosive. The Metamorphs start in the Goliath Truck, so the Goliath Truck can scout. The Metamorphs want to charge the enemy. This is going to have Combat Genestealer Cult and Shooting Imperial Guard. After the truck scouts, the Reductus can get into the truck in turn 1, after the Metamorph scouted with it before the game started. All models inside need to have scout for it to be able to scout, so the Reductus can't start in there and it's still scout. Just be careful, as the Reductus cannot get out in the same turn as she got in, whereas the Metamorphs can get out immediately. Or have the truck move, and then the Metamorphs can get out, where the Reductus can't. There are Hand Flamers on the Metamorphs, so when they disembark, the Goliath Truck can give them full rerolls to wound, which is something very valuable for those Hand Flamers. Auto hit, and full rerolls to wound. The Locusts and the Acolytes hide near an objective, planning to heroically intervene to help friends that are charged. Or against a very combat-heavy army, you can put them on the objective, and the enemy has to muster up some shooting to try and take you down, because if they charge you, you will fight first. This is a very big weakness of Orcs and World Eaters. But on one of the objectives, we want the Icon Ward and 20 Neophytes. With a Hero Returned, these are Objective Control 3 Neophytes. And if you need more defense than their 5+ save, yeah you do, and a 5+ Feel No Pain, use Go to Ground. That's one of the stratagems we have available if we're not going to be using the detachment stratagems. That gives you the benefit of cover and an invulnerable save. So we'll put them on, say, the leftmost objective. One of the Ridge Runners has a Mining Laser and a Spotter. One of the Ridge Runners has a Mining Laser and a Survey Auger. The one with the Survey Auger supports the Neophytes, also giving them ignore cover when they shoot. The one with the Spotter supports the Metamorphs, so the Metamorphs can have an extra point of armor penetration on their Hand Flamers, and also their melee weapons. If there was an available Imperial Guard unit that could shoot and hit something that the Ridge Runner then shoots, you can hit on a 2+ with that Mining Laser, and also the Heavy Stubbers. They also get Ballistic Skill 3+, and also get the +1 to hit. The 2 squads of 5 Acolytes with Hand Flamers are there to drop in. They do missions, primary and secondary missions, mainly secondary missions. But if you needed some unit to be there to terraform, they can arrive and do that. It depends if the 20 Neophyte shooting is going to be of any value. Sometimes it just isn't. And the Acolytes have 4 Hand Flamers and a Cult Icon, so the enemy has to commit to getting rid of all of them. If they kill 3, but 3 come back, they wasted their shots. The Pure Strains are there to strike at enemy screening units, and small enemy units that would complete missions. We do that immediately. So enemy Katachans, Sisters of Silence, small units like these. We want to kill them, and it's fine if the Pure Strains die, we use Resurgence points to bring them back, and then we have another unit to do the same thing as the Acolytes with Hand Flamers. Though the Acolytes with Hand Flamers have a ranged weapon and full rerolls to wound if we need it, the Pure Strain Genestealers can advance and charge. So if you need to go run and kill something, they can do that. The 5 bikes will scout and block enemies alongside the Pure Strains. It's important to hold the enemy back for a turn so that the Neophytes and the Death Core of Krieg have time to get to the objectives they want, so that they will live on them forever and regenerate models on that all game. Those 2 big blocks getting blocked by enemy units, like, I don't know, a massive tank, that's very bad. That's a risk for these units. Have them advance in the early turns. So our big massive tank is the Shadow Sword. It has become cheaper since the last time I made a video on the Brood Brothers Auxilia. 410 points instead of 440 points. It deals with big problems. Put it on the central objective and plant that objective control 8 hull down on that spot. If terrain is unfavourable or unsuitable targets do not seem to be in their arc, go for a side objective and the neophytes can change to the centre. Remember that the Shadow Sword counts as 2 drops in deployment as they are super heavies, so your opponent shows you where 2 of their units are going to be deployed after you deploy this one big tank. There are noticeable weaknesses for it. The enemies will either run at you and engage you in combat. The big gun has blast, so you can't fire it at units in combat with you through the big guns never tire rule, but you can with your heavy flamers, las cannons and heavy bolters. But having a blocking scout sentinel or disposable and replaceable Genestealer Cult unit is a good screen. Or we have a heroically intervening Locus. Plus acolytes with mining tools that are anti-vehicle 4+, and damage 3. Otherwise, enemies may just avoid the big tank, which allows you to dominate and control the central objective and reinforce the flanks. One of those flanks is the 20 Death Corps of Krieg. They will go for the right objective. That's the basic game plan. Left objective Neophytes, central objective Shadow Sword, right objective Death Corps of Krieg. They have a Primaris Psyker, so if you have a spare Magos model, there you go. Have a 4+ invulnerable save, but it's only against enemy shooting, and it might not work if you roll a 1. I prefer a Quartermaster Cadre for 45 points, which gives a 5+ Fear No Pain, and that 5+ Fear No Pain comes from the Servitors, not the character, so precision attacks against the unit can't stop it. The Scout Sentinel has a las cannon. We use the ability to reroll hit rolls of 1 on the Shadow Sword, or on lots of Krieg shots, or on Kazakin shots. You can use this ability and still perform actions. What about the Kazakin? What weapons are we potentially boosting? The squad has 2 melter guns, 2 plasma guns, a hotshot marksman rifle, 1 with a hotshot las gun and voxcaster, 3 more with hotshot las guns, and a sergeant with a plasma pistol and power sword. They could scout. So many units in this army can scout. So many Genestealer Cult units scout. So many of the Brood Brothers units scout. But I put them into strategic reserve so they can be safe. Then they can turn up and shoot something at pretty close range. They can use the order to fire by rank to get an extra shot on the rapid fire weapons. They can use their orders to get +1 to hit. Or once they take an objective, they can up their own objective control and leadership with duty and honor. Then they can hold that objective. And lastly is the Cyclops Demolition Vehicle. The kill it now power that it causes in enemies is surprising considering how few mortal wounds it has the potential to do. Have it in outflank, well, strategic reserves, and do their missions that I mentioned as best it can. You could swap this for martial espionage on a Reductus, but I prefer not to. I prefer to have fun. Especially in this detachment where you can surprise your enemy with what constitutes a Genestealer Cult army. Massive tanks is usually not what comes to mind. The last question is what to have on the home objective. You can start the Neophytes so that there's 1 model starting there, then a plan generations in the making kicks in, it is your objective, and then the Neophytes will move on to the next objective. You could swap 5 of the Acolytes with hand flamers for Acolytes with mining tools and auto pistols. They can start and stay on the home objective to try and generate you command points that we'll use on grenades, and not many other stratagems. The Ridge Runner with the Survey Auger could have a mortar instead of a mining laser, and it could be on the home objective. Or the Sentinel could be on the home objective. It's quite an annoying unit to have to take down, though enemies will be able to defeat you with objective control. Other options for modifying this army list? The Shadow Sword and the Kazakin could be swapped for 2 Rogel Dawns. I have my preference and style, big cannon to fix big problems. But if the terrain you play on won't fit it, how narrow are the gaps so you can't fit a Cyclops Demolition Vehicle through? But oh yeah, the Shadow Sword. Yeah, big lad. Rogel Dawns are a thinner tank. And if you like horse, you could have Rough Riders instead of the Scout Sentinel. They also make a good screen. They can't scout, there's no support in like reroll hit rolls of 1 that the Scout Sentinel does. 60 points for 5. They can fall back and shoot and charge, so you could pull them back, convey the detachment rule to a unit, then charge back in to reuse the lance ability of your lancers. But I'm not interested in the detachment rule, even if I do like the lance charge. Horse enjoyers can have their horse in their horse list. This list functions by having hard-to-kill infantry blocks on objectives and many supporting units to complete missions as they come up. I am relying on the Shadow Sword and the Ridge Runners to deal with the bigger enemy threats, but I switch it to a different army list, because I'm assuming that you can play Legends. If you have the 45-point Quartermaster Cadre instead of the 60-point Psyker, there is enough points for the Reductors to have Martial Espionage to help the Death Corps of Krieg block, or another Cyclops demolition vehicle. Then the list comes to 2,000 points. This is the real 2,000 point list. Legends units are allowed in all games. Most tournaments, but not all tournaments, ban them, and for that reason, like they are the laughably thin line between balance and imbalance, considering we are looking at a rather weak detachment, for that reason, some clubs ban Legends units. That is it for this detachment video, but you must have a look at the ranking of the Brood Brothers units, including Legends, so you can make your own army lists with other units. You will know which ones are the best and how to use them. My darlings and viewers, have a great day of 40k.